Hi guys! Today we'll be recapping a story called Go Away Romeo. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot. Enjoy! We are all familiar with the tragic story of the star-crossed lovers Romeo and Juliet. But what if someone's story is much more tragic than theirs? What if the one who truly suffered is the one who is left behind? In a city riddled with violence due to the long-standing conflict between two warring families, Rosaline Capulet thought that she had found true love. However, he was the son of her family's enemy. We all know that this was bound to not end well. Romeo Montague was like a dream come true. The moment their eyes met, she knew that what they had was indeed true love. Despite everything, she took the risk. They had a secret relationship far from the judging eyes of others. For a time, he was the only one she could think of, even more so when he proposed to her. It felt natural to say yes to the love of her life, and she only wished that they could marry soon. However, just as quickly as his love for her had swept her off her feet, it also seemed to vanish just as fast. His eyes no longer held the affection it had when he looked at her. It was as if his attention was somewhere else. Gosh, men! No matter how attractive you guys are, you have no right to play with a girl's heart at all. However, despite the possibilities in her mind, she never doubted him. And a few days after, everything came crumbling down when her cousin Juliet died. What made everything worse, at least for her, was that hours later, Romeo was found dead as well. She was so devastated that she felt like her grief would take her life as well. The funerals were held separately, and the two families declared a truce to end the fighting. Both families were scared to reignite the wrath of God that they believed had cost the lives of two young people. Even though everything had turned bleak for Rosaline, the light shined on her when she discovered that Romeo had left her a gift. She was pregnant. Her son had brought happiness into her life. Even though her love was gone, she intended to keep him in her heart. However, fate was even more cruel to her than others. She eventually learned that Romeo and Juliet were lovers and that they faked their death all along. They ran away together and Rosaline was left behind. What a tragic start! An adorable little boy is seen picking a beautiful flower in the garden. The maids are enamored by him, especially when he announces that the flower is as pretty as his mama. So cute. I want to put him in my pocket and keep him safe forever. Meanwhile, Rosaline is facing the wrath of her father. He is enraged that she intends to attend the ball. He doesn't want her to bring any more shame to the family by being proud of her sin. He even insists that the child must not be seen or heard by anyone. You call yourself a father? If anything, you're the shameful one. Ugh. Rosaline, on the other hand, simply addresses her parents calmly. With a determined attitude, she tells them that despite what others think, she is not ashamed to be a mother. You tell them, girl. No matter what they say, she will attend the ball. Later on, as she is getting ready, she recalls how painful the wounds of the past still are. She is now reluctant to trust anyone with her heart again. Suddenly, her son comes barging into the room with a flower from the garden. How cute! He hugs her tightly, and she can't help but wonder if her innocent child will ever know of the pain his father had caused. Mino presents her with the flower, and she accepts it graciously. What happened to her doesn't stop her from loving her son. That's right, Rosaline. Despite the dirt that was covering the child from his adventure in the garden, she carries Mino in her arms, and she tells herself that she refuses to let the past take anything from her. She tells the maid that she should try another dress. Later on, mother and son look stunning in their outfits. Despite the strong opinions of her parents, she is determined to go to the ball unafraid. They even warn her that she's going to have to deal with what's going to happen on her own. We stan a strong, independent woman indeed. The moment Rosaline and her son are announced upon entering the prince's palace, the judging eyes of the crown turn to them. It does not take long for them to open their mouths and begin saying vile things about her and Mino. These people are truly the ones who are shameful. In front of a child? Really? So classic of you. Meanwhile, a devilishly handsome man's opinion is asked by one of the gossiping nobles. He is Count Paris, and he simply observes Rosaline make her way to the prince. Stop looking so broodingly handsome, mister. We're not supposed to be distracted, you know? Rosaline, on the other hand, is resolved to show everyone that they are not what they thought her to be. When she finally faces the prince, she reminds Mino how they are supposed to greet his highness. The two of them bow and greet the prince a happy birthday. The prince smirks at their display. Did I mention that he's incredibly handsome? He is. What's up with this city? Why are the hot guys everywhere? Can we have at least one, please? Prince Aeschylus expresses his surprise at seeing Rosaline present, but declares that it is a pleasure to have her in his celebration. The prince then acknowledges Mino's presence, which makes the crowd snicker. Vile creatures. However, Rosaline is not easily deterred. She compliments the prince by comparing him to the sun. As expected, the arrogant prince likes nothing more than being glorified. He declares that they enjoy their evening in the palace, especially the little one. Thank you for not being bad to our little Mino, our dear prince. Plus handsome points. But despite that, the gossiping nobles are relentless. Hearing them talking endlessly amongst themselves, Rosaline can't help but tremble. Good thing Mino's cuteness powers are there to make her happy. He asks if he did good, and Rosaline assures him he did. She even tells him that he can have cake as a reward. The excited Mino instantly dashes off before she can stop him. Unfortunately, he bumps into Count Paris, who is still brooding, by the way. Mino is startled and goes back to his mother. Rosaline apologizes, but the Count rudely asks her why she even brought the child to the palace. She doesn't like what he's trying to say. Nuh-uh. Bad Count. Rosaline vaguely recognizes the man, and she answers that any noble can attend the prince's birthday celebration. The Count clarifies that he means that the child is probably afraid to be in this kind of situation. She then starts thinking that he is questioning her as a parent. The Count continues to say that she is dragging her son to a cruel environment, all because she is playing a game. Now, wait a minute, mister. You can't just jump to conclusions like this, no matter how undeniably attractive you are. OMG, what am I saying? We are cross with you, Sir Count. Rosaline expresses how he is assuming things about her even though they just met. In return, he tells her how rude it is to conclude his personality on the get-go. She then retorts that he did it first to her. They continue their argument, and despite their clashing opinions at present, I can't help but think that this is the start of something else. They do look good together. Do you guys agree with me? She explains that rather than letting her son perish in the shadows, she will show her son how to be brave and live confidently. Slay, Queen Mother! Mino will be brave just like how you are now. Unexpectedly, the Count kneels in front of Mino and reminds him to stay brave. The adorable little baby smiles at him charmingly and thanks him. He then rubs the boy's head and suggests that they try the strawberry tarts. What a random interaction, right? I tell you, there's something there. Even the sinister-looking young lady over here thinks so, since she notes how she had never seen the Count smiling like that before. While they are trying the desserts, two ladies approach them, and we all know that their intentions aren't pure. They immediately start mocking her for having to raise a son alone. These people have no regard for human decency. Rosaline knows that they are up to no good, but she still asks Mino to greet them properly. Her son smiles at them, and the two ladies, despite their horrible personalities, can't help but note how adorable he is. Suddenly, another young woman, Lady Claudia, approaches them. When Rosaline introduces Mino to her, the child merely trembles. Ugh, she really is sinister looking. Even our Mino sees it. As expected, Lady Claudia begins talking about how lucky she is that the Capulets have not disowned her yet. The other two ladies start backing up Claudia as well, wanting her to give Rosaline what she deserves. However, Rosaline is as level-headed as ever. She describes how her family is kind. Keep it up, girl, we got your back. They then begin asking about the father of Mino. They clearly don't have any good intentions with this line of questioning. Our girl here merely regards them as indifference, stating that she has no obligation to them whatsoever. She even tells them not to discuss such things in front of her son. Meanwhile, Mino is distracted when some noble children begin beckoning him towards them. He excitedly makes his way toward them, but he clashes with a mean-looking noble, causing him to spill his wine onto his shirt. He does not take it well, even though he's dealing with a little kid. He starts shouting at him and calling him all sorts of names. Really mature. Rosaline instantly hides her son behind her while apologizing profusely. She is willing to take responsibility for what happened, but the noble won't accept it, and he even begins preaching about giving the child harsher punishment for being an illegitimate child. Ugh! What a horrible person! It's a freaking adorable child! Rosaline will not let anyone stomp on Mino, so she is about to retaliate. However, a hand on her shoulder stops her. It's Count Paris. He faces the Lord himself and asks the Lord to refrain from such undignified behavior. He reprimands the Lord like a boss for interacting in such a way. Before the noble can add anything, the prince himself approaches them. He stops him from ruining the night even more. The lord is humiliated, so he stomps away from the scene. Serves him right! What kind of grown man would have beef with a kid? Rosaline looks at Count Paris, incredulous that he went out of his way to help her. The Count merely smiles at her. OMG, I am swooning, especially with this knight in shining armor display earlier. Rosaline and the Count are still lost in each other's eyes. When she realizes this, she averts her gaze. The prince, on the other hand, demands to continue the revelry. When everyone else is distracted, Rosaline bows in front of the Count and the prince to express her gratitude. However, she still thinks that she should have handled it herself. She clearly doesn't want others to solve her problems. Suddenly, Mino calls out to her. She notices how badly the situation has affected him. Count Paris declares that her son is in a state of shock and offers to take them someplace else to rest. Why does he have such dazzling purple eyes? I'm getting distracted again. Rosaline refuses his offer. She expresses how appreciative she is, but she wants to take her son home instead of taking a proper break from all these people. She smiles at her son as she leads him away, but the little baby Mino is still teary-eyed from what happened. Oh, poor baby. I want to hug him so bad. Rosaline hears the other nobles gossiping once again, and she has had enough. While carrying her son, she turns back at them and glares menacingly. Do not mess with the queen, people. She will not let anyone hurt her son no matter how entitled you all are. Meanwhile, as they watch Rosaline walk away, the prince warns Paris not to involve himself with her if he wants to preserve his reputation. Back home, her father uses the "I told you so" card, while her mother tells her how she should have listened to them. But she ignores them. Later on, while they're taking a bath, Mino is still crying. He tells her how sorry he is for ruining everything. No, it's not your fault, baby. It's those terrible brought-up old people. Rosaline is shocked by this and instantly hugs her son. She assures him he did nothing wrong. That's right. She tells him that she will always protect him, so she has to be strong. She knows that the commotion had garnered her unnecessary attention. No matter what is to come, she will be ready for it, and she is determined to face it. Mino, despite his obvious sadness, declares that he is strong too, since he did not cry in front of everyone. However, she tells her dear Mino that crying is never shameful. She tells him how he cannot keep all his pain bottled up inside him and never let it out. Otherwise, all of it will explode into something bad. She knows that he will understand when he's older, so for now, she assures him that he can smile brightly, and she will take care of everything. When they are ready for bed, Rosaline offers to tell Mino a bedtime story. The boy is ecstatic since he loves stories. She tells him about Queen Mab, who is the elegant queen of the fairies. She describes how tiny she is and how she dances on top of people's noses when they sleep. At first, Mino doesn't like the idea of a tiny person dancing on his nose, but she explains that she does this to give people good dreams about what they desire the most, such as candies and butterflies. We love their mother-son relationship. Rosaline loves her son so much that it's heartbreaking that she has to deal with so much. Suddenly, Mino declares that he dreams about having a papa. Rosaline is shocked to hear this, but before she can say anything else, her son tells her how sleepy he is. He tells her how he will dream about having a papa along with his mama. Ugh, this is so sad. She observes her son for a while and kisses him on the forehead. She then goes to the balcony and looks at the moon. She is in a melancholic state as she apologizes to Mino that she will not be able to fulfill his dream. She wishes she wasn't alone, but she's not ready to trust anyone. Maybe she never will be, but she vows to make things right. Meanwhile, far away from Verona, the culprit of everything, Romeo, hugs the beautiful Juliet from behind. This is when she tells him that she wants to go home. I fear that everything will just get worse for Rosaline. Romeo asks Juliet to come downstairs. Apparently, she has been wallowing in their room for the whole day. He encourages her by offering the lemon pie that is baked for her. However, she tells him that she's not in the mood for it. He asks her if everything is okay, and she tells him once again that she wants to go home. He hugs his lover again and reminds her that she said that she wished to never go back there again. She hugs him and expresses that she misses some of the things they left behind. Juliet is conflicted because she doesn't want to go back to the life she had before, where her mind was filled with confusion. Romeo had promised to clear all of this, and she has held onto this promise. The reason she is torn between staying in their peaceful life and going back to Verona is that she was the star of that city. Oh, apparently she has an ego to stroke. I'm sorry, Juliet, but I'm on Rosaline's side through and through. She recalls how she was the light they looked up to, and at the same time, they didn't see her for who she was. She describes herself as a hollow star that didn't glow from the inside. She was sheltered by her parents, but she was also displayed as their most prized possession. But a cage of gold is still a cage. Everything was just too heavy to bear. All right, I sympathize with her a little bit. Life like that is not easy. Everything changes when her knight appears. When Romeo had found her, she was begging to be saved. She all but pleaded for him to take her away. And so they left, because the irony is, despite him being her supposed enemy, she never saw him as one. Romeo hugs her back, apologizing for not being able to free her mind of her troubles. She stops him, saying that she really loved their time there together. All she wants is to go back to Verona for a day. She tells him that they can be careful. He wants her to confirm if that is what she really wants, and she answers that she only wants to clear any doubts in her heart once and for all. He then kneels in front of her and holds her chin, agreeing to do as she asks. She is so happy that she jumps into his arms instantly. She declares how much she loves him, and he answers that he loves her too. Too much sweetness. Or I'm probably just biased. However, despite Juliet's happiness, Romeo is seen with an evil glint in his eyes. For a second, he remembers the image of Rosaline with her back turned from him. He apparently had long expected Juliet to suggest going back to Verona, and he had prepared for this beforehand. Why am I getting an incredible amount of evilness from this version of Romeo? Could it be that his romance with Juliet has a more sinister purpose than true love? But one thing is for sure, Rosaline is about to suffer even more. As for Aeschylus, constantly appealing the nobles to get things done gives him a headache. Just the other day, another report of a child falling off the side of a bridge came in. However, despite throwing big parties to gain the nobles' favor, they believe that money should be diverted to their own personal interests and not to public infrastructure, as if Verona isn't a home to all of them. Suddenly, his advisor suggests that he should hold a competition among the nobles to please him. Aeschylus accepts his suggestion and will host a competition of his own choosing in order to push the development project forward. Raising his wine by the window where there's a clear view, Aeschylus thinks that this city will be remembered as a place of pleasure and beauty. Unbeknownst to them, Tybalt is eavesdropping on their conversation behind the door. Meanwhile, Rosaline is running errands in the city as a punishment from her father. But to her, it's rather exciting and important. Also, she wants Mino to grow up with peaceful childhood memories, and to do that, running errands prevents unnecessary arguments in the house. Rosaline breaking generational trauma is the right mother we stand for. However, on their way to the flower shop, Rosaline notices the commotion where a child fell off the bridge and into the river. As a mother, Rosaline can't help but ask, why isn't the prince doing more for the city? I agree, Rosaline. Let's be patient. Shortly after, as Rosaline rants about keeping the children safe, she spotted two familiar faces among the crowd, each wearing their robes to hide their identity while freely roaming around the city. Her heart feels like it's about to burst out of her chest. She can't help but remember the past where she was in a never-ending cycle of misery. Or is she still in it? She was about to call him by the name Romeo, but she gets distracted when Pierre asks if she forgot to get something for Mino. When she looks around, they're gone, but her heartbeat is not slowing down. It's like fate is determined to bring up old ghosts. She then starts to question herself. Is she really doing enough to protect her own son? Pull yourself together, mother. Rule number 1, do not let him get into you. Later that day, Mino welcomes his mother warmly and hugs her. She notices that Mino has a red apple, so she asks where it comes from. Aw, there's nothing else that a mother wishes for but to see her child beaming with joy upon her return. Turns out, Tybalt gave it to him. When she enters the room to meet him, Tybalt casually sits on the couch, perfectly embodying his nickname as the Prince of Cats. I mean, his eyes do look like those of cats. However, Rosaline is determined to do everything through sheer strength of will in order to stand against anyone, despite the rumors circulating the noble houses. But then, Tybalt has something else to offer, an opportunity that won't make her powerless anymore. Sometimes playing with cats can be dangerous, but will she trust him when he says that he won't scratch her? Lady Capulet, the matriarch of the family, summons the whole family to announce that the prince will no longer host more balls. Instead, he has announced a royal arts competition. This event aims to recognize and cement Verona in the advent of the Renaissance era. Rosaline thinks that it is exactly what Tybalt has told her. Still, it isn't enough to trust him. And with this, Lady Capulet sees a chance for their family to gain Aeschylus's favor. And so she will choose those who will be in charge of searching for talent that will represent the Capulet family. Sooner or later, she will choose an heir to the family, and whoever brings the most glory to the Capulets will be named as one. Before Rosaline can speak up, her uncle and father are already arguing who is better to represent the family, bragging about their affluence and connections. Seeing how prepared they are to argue with each other's strengths, Rosaline realizes that Tybalt also informed them ahead. See what I mean? Then, the argument turns into personal attacks and the whole family is in chaos, bickering at each other. So how is she supposed to speak now? Suddenly, Tybalt whispers in her ear, if she wants to survive politics, then she must take advantage of the chaos. Read its air and ride its flow. She's fully aware that Tybalt can't be trusted, but this can be her chance. And so, she snatches the pitcher full of wine and goes up beside Lady Capulet. She then pours some wine in her glass, sympathizing how difficult it must be on her grandmother's side. Lady Capulet notices her, saying that she cannot pass her legacy to a chaotic group like them. Rosaline grabs this opportunity and tells her grandmother that perhaps the person she's looking for is the one she least expects the most. In short, choose her. Lady Capulet is about to take a sip, but she stops and glares at her. She can clearly see what Rosaline is up to. After all, she's a veteran and no one should mess up with her. Lady Capulet asks her directly why she should allow Rosaline to participate when she's the most troublesome in the family. The prince has never been so cordial with the Capulet family, even under Lady Capulet's leadership after all these years. But Rosaline argues that if their family had better connections with the prince, they wouldn't have had this meeting to discuss it in the first place. Perhaps she can be useful. Woohoo! You go, Rosaline! Lady Capulet's lips make a curve. Suddenly, she stomps her cane to call everyone's attention because the lady has decided. As expected, Bernardo and Geronimo will take part in the competition on behalf of the Capulet family, but there's one more thing. Rosaline will also participate. Good decision, Grandma. This makes a lot of objections from the whole family that even Geronimo, Rosaline's father, sided with her brother Bernardo in awfully criticizing that Rosaline has no special qualities and only brings shame in their family name. Wow! Judge her much? Pfft. Rosaline is about to speak up because she can't let them persuade Lady Capulet to disregard her, but then Tybalt raises his hand, saying that he wants to take part in the family head selection as well. And just like that, everyone's attention is diverted to him. Lady Capulet silences them again, emphasizing that her decision is final and irrevocable. Sometimes Tybalt seems like a good person, but we aren't sure about that yet. When the meeting is dismissed, Lady Capulet commends her that she has a way with words, but in the end, it's the results that matters. If she ends up bringing shame once more, she will be shunned and never acknowledged by their family ever again. To her, fate is slowly returning in her favor, so she can't waste this opportunity. With this, her son will not suffer under prejudice and mockery by his own family. He will be loved and respected like she's always wished for herself. How far will she go for her son? Shortly after, Tybalt reminds her that the portrait will hold a significant value for the ones in power to be able to appeal to the public, and putting together an ideal image is crucial in crafting the public opinion of the rulers. Rosaline is quick to grasp what he's trying to say, that whoever is able to have control over the art also has control over the economy of nobles. While in deep thought, something catches her attention, a famous cityscape painted a few years ago. However, the painter by the name of Count Paris hasn't painted in years. Count Paris, it rings a bell. He's the best one in Verona, and Aeschylus himself used to commission him for all his portraits. Despite being the best, he stopped after his beloved died. Indeed, he's a genius painter who never picks up the brush again after he lost his muse. But Rosaline is still determined to ask this man. However, Tybalt warns her that a lot of people failed to convince him to paint again. It's like she'll be wasting her time going to him. Why is he stopping her now? Something's already fishy at this point. Tybalt then asks her to look for another painter instead, but she knows very well that he isn't the type to back off when he wants something. What did that man do to make Tybalt avoid him? Even so, Paris is the winning key to this competition, so she has to convince him. Well, it turns out that Count Paris is the same man from the ball. Rosaline knows that he's most likely to say no to her, given their last interaction, but then Paris tells her that he might be able to have some of his connections to assist her under one condition. He gives her a list containing the materials they will require. However, these are rare and hard to find. If she can get it by the end of the day, then he'll introduce her to them. Wait there, sir. That's quite tight for a deadline. But of course, she'll do what it takes to get it. Rosaline expresses her gratitude for this opportunity and takes her leave. Paris is looking out the window when his butler reminds him that he gave her an impossible task. After all, the dragon blood pigment alone will be difficult to find because of its mythical reputation. But for her sake, she shouldn't get herself involved in Aeschylus's political game, nor he wants to take part of it. Oh, so you want to keep her safe, huh? How nice of you, handsome fella. Also, it's a shame to see the city damage the value of art. The pursuit of art in its purest form has been tainted, and it's been a long time since he had the passion to pick up a paintbrush. Later that evening, while Paris is taking a hot bath, he thinks that Rosaline has given up since it's already late. When he saw those decisive gleams in her eyes, he had a brief worry that she might actually go ahead and do it. This is for the best. Or so he thought. He then hears resistance outside, so he goes out on the balcony only to see Rosaline covered in mud and wounds, arguing with the guard to let her go inside and see Paris. Whoopsie. That's not the face of someone who gave up at all. Paris's eyes widen in disbelief. Despite being soaked in rain, she came holding the bag of dragon blood in her hands. But due to exhaustion, her body has collapsed. Luckily, he is able to catch her with one hand. When she regains consciousness, she wonders where she is. To find out, she leaves the room, but then she encounters Paris's butler. He escorts her to another room where Paris is. There, she expresses her gratitude for his generosity. For Paris, it seems like he underestimated her stubbornness. After all, she has obtained the dragon blood, which must not have been easy. Looking back, Rosaline admits that it wasn't easy at all. Suffice to say, she still managed to get it. Looking proud, isn't she, sir? However, she wasn't able to obtain the rest of the materials within the given time, so Paris tells her that she still failed. However, Rosaline argues, saying that before he belittles her efforts, perhaps he should take a shot at it first. She even declares that they can talk about more reasonable deadlines after that. She's the girl boss here, sir. She knows what she wants. So just a tip, don't even try to make it harder on you both, because she'll get what she wants no matter what. Period. But still, Paris disagrees, arguing about how easy it is for nobles to use their influence and connection in the market. He then starts to question how he can rely on a partner if she can't even do it. Ugh. Rosaline knows better. She is well aware that he sent her on a fool's errand to drive her away. See? You didn't see that coming, right? There is a long pause before Paris admits, telling her that for her own safety, she should stay out of it. But our dear Rosaline isn't even afraid of it. Even if she has to find someone else, she would for the sake of her son. Paris stared at the wound on her hand. He then crosses his arms and tells her that he will obtain the rest of the materials and paint for her. She has the grit and bearings to have a fighting chance in this kind of politics, and she has proven herself as a trustworthy individual, despite her shortcomings. See, that wasn't so hard, right? Saying yes? You shouldn't have put up a fight in the first place, dear sir. Before she leaves, Paris advises her not to solely rely on her recklessness because he will be her partner in this game. Can we ask for an extension of this partner thingy? Partner for life, perhaps? Kidding. I don't think so. Before she can go in the carriage, Paris's butler warns her of the man named Tybalt. When Paris's butler reunites with him, he never thought that he'd give in to Rosaline, not when he has been avoiding politics for so long. In short, he hasn't seen Paris this thrown off in many years. In Paris's defense, it's unavoidable to be part of Aeschylus's little game, so he prefers to do it on his own terms. Okay, if you say so, sir, but is that all to it? When Rosaline gets home, Tybalt is the first person who asks her where she has been. Talk about acting like a house husband. He is curious why she didn't ask him for help when Paris sent her on a little mission. She could have uttered a word and he could have pulled the strings himself, but Rosaline cut to the chase. After revealing the information he had to her father and uncle, she can't definitely trust him. Also, she tells him how Paris's butler warned her about it, but all he can say is that he could have told her that himself. He's not even denying it, huh? Then, he notices her wound and quickly grabs the bandage out of his pocket to wrap around her hand, asking what she plans to do. Wait, what? Is he bipolar or something? Why is he acting concerned now? But then, she refused his help and told him that she would follow the advice but will make the final judgment herself. He reminds her that trusting someone can take a lot out of her. He wonders if it's going to be different for her this time. After that, he whispers in her ear, wishing her a good night's sleep. But to her, it's rather a chilly greeting crawling up her spine, remembering the last time she was betrayed. Honestly, Tybalt, are you trying to help or what? In Mino's room, the child wakes up when Rosaline kisses his forehead. When he notices the wound on her hand, he holds it dearly onto his cheek, crying to see his mother in pain. Am I just overthinking it, or did Tybalt want to cover her wound so the child wouldn't be able to see his mother in pain? We are getting more and more confused here, Tybalt. Show us the real you soon, please. Rosaline didn't see this coming, so she promises that she's strong and will handle everything. The next day, rumors circulate about Rosaline's connection with a mysterious benefactor. Bernardo seems to know about this too, but when Geronimo comes in to mock him in minding women's conversation, he returns the insult, pointing out how Geronimo's daughter is already a significant blow to their reputation. Also, Bernardo found out that the event in the palace and its record officially recognizes both Rosaline and Mino as possible inheritor candidates of the Capulet family. Fuming with rage and fear that they might be taken down, Bernardo points out how Geronimo can't even control his own daughter. Geronimo clenches his fist, denying his claims, but in his mind, he needs to do something about her. Geronimo slams the door. On the other hand, Bernardo grits his teeth in anger, thinking how the Count dares to disrespect him like that. Meanwhile, Rosaline visits Paris's mansion, but his butler tells her that Paris doesn't wish to see anyone at the moment. Rosaline argues that they agreed to work together, so what seems to be the problem now? Paris's butler tries to make her understand that Paris just wants to do most of the work by himself. Rosaline apologizes, but as partners, they must see this through because the Count needs to know the value of having an extra head in the equation. Of course, he can't get rid of her that easily. Once again, Paris's butler is impressed by how stubborn and clever she is. Well, that is our queen. No point in resisting, butler. She's unstoppable. And so Paris's butler escorts her to a room, but little does she know, it's the room where Paris works on his painting. The sun rays crawl up to reach his broad shoulders, while his hair dances in the sparkling light's reflection. Not to mention his unbuttoned polo, as if the sun is just a mere light compared to how hot he is. He is the real painting here, you guys. Don't you agree? Suddenly, Paris asks for the palette, brush, tray, spatula, another brush with the finest tip, and all without even turning around. Of course, our mother runs over here and there to meet his demands without making a sound. She notices how his fingers move gracefully in every stroke he creates with surety. Those eyes that continuously wander from every edge of the canvas, the paintbrush that seems to have become part of his being. It's almost intoxicating. Paris wipes his sweat with his wrist. Wait a minute. This isn't the time for independency, sir. Rosaline is there, so kindly turn around and ask for a little help. And yes, he does turn around and is very surprised to see her standing before him. But well, she's just as surprised as he is. Who wouldn't be? I mean, eyes locking up on those abs? I mean, we should stop this, guys. They're just workmates. Or are they? Rosaline admits that she insists on coming in. Paris then remembers how suspicious it was when his butler looked a bit happy when he told him to find a perfect assistant. She is indeed perfect. Good job, butler. Paris senses that she has something to say. With all honesty, she feels bad seeing him paint. And so she apologizes for treating his art as a mere tool to win Aeschylus's competition. But above all, she is greatly honored to witness such skill. Paris stares at her for a moment. For the first time since they met, he smiles for her. And so she becomes his assistant for the rest of the day. When the servant brings the food, Paris's butler offers to take it in when the time is right. He clearly understood the assignment. High five, butler! Seeing Paris having the motivation to paint again, and Rosaline, who seems amused by his art, is such a wonderful sight to see. For the rest of the day, Paris smiles in between the strokes of his art. And did I mention how handsome you look, Sir Putty? Days later, Mino also joins his mother in watching Count Paris paint. He surely enjoys staying at the Count's estate as he gets comfortable munching on his dessert. Meanwhile, a smile forms on the Count's lips as he glimpses at Rosaline with her son. Feeling his gaze on her, she approaches him and thanks him for allowing her to bring her child to his house. Gracefully holding the brush and palette in both his hands, He tells her that it's not a problem since he offered to have the kid in his house, as she was having a difficult time being away from Mino. Such a very understanding man we have here. Can we also invite ourselves to your house, sir? And just watch you paint all day? Rosaline observes that Paris hasn't made much progress in his painting over the past few days. With a hint of worry on her face, she asks him if everything is all right. In her mind, she ponders on why he is hailed as the most renowned artist in the city. She's always in great awe of the way he moves his brush, which for her is such a sight to see. But lately, she has observed that the Count seems to be down and that something is weighing on his mind. Paris, on the other hand, is having an inner monologue about how he can't seem to find inspiration lately. He thinks about introducing Rosaline to another artist, but then he thinks about how she has trusted him already and he doesn't want to let her down. Meanwhile, Mino, who's intently observing Paris painting some strokes on the canvas, gets excited, and his eyes sparkle upon seeing the painting. He suddenly exclaims that he wants to paint too. With excitement rushing over him, he accidentally knocks over the bucket of paint, making him shout as he's about to fall. As quick as light, Rosaline and Paris rush to Mino. Both of them end up catching Mino before he could fall to the floor. Just look at that scene. The three of them in one frame and very close to each other. It just looks so adorable that you could think that they are one cute family. Fingers definitely crossed. When they get up, he asks her if her son is all right, but she replies with an apology for what just happened. Seeing the paint that just got knocked off, making a mess on the floor, she reprimands her son and tells him to apologize to the Count. Trembling, Mino apologizes to Paris, but what happens next is not what he expected. Paris gently pats his head and comforts him. The Count tells him that he was once in his shoes, being so enthusiastic about art. Just then, he dips his brush into the paint dripping on the floor, saying that he is just reminded that inspiration can come from unexpected things. Later, he becomes happy seeing how the color of the paint turned out to be perfect for his painting. Everything turned out well, and Mino is so happy that he gets to paint together with Paris. The scene of both of them together makes Rosaline pleased. Gosh, he's so perfect. I want a man like that too. However, it's revealed that someone is watching them secretly, as there is a shadow lurking outside the room they're in. Rosaline is very excited and in such a lovely mood, as she would finally get to see the painting finished. Just as she thought that everything has been going well, some news shatters her. The painting that Paris has been diligently working on for days got cruelly destroyed. Who could have committed such an unacceptable act? It seems like something sinister is brewing. Shocked by what happened to the painting, Rosaline suggests conducting an investigation, but Paris tells her not to bother as he will handle the situation. With his darkened expression, he turns his back and tells his butler to stay with Rosaline. With the person on his mind who might be behind the incident, he recalls the encounter he had with Bernardo the other day. Bernardo confronted him about his partnership with Rosaline, but he replied that it was of his own accord to help Rosaline. He continued by saying how disheartening it is to see how much he's changed. But then Bernardo, out of the blue, brought up his daughter Juliet and blames Paris for her death. So Juliet was the rumored Count's lover who died? Bringing up Juliet to Paris just further soured his mood, making him snap at Bernardo. Meanwhile, back in the present at the Count's estate, Rosaline asks the butler to watch over her son before she follows Paris. When she catches up with him, she asks for an explanation of his sudden outburst from earlier. With a heavy heart, he apologizes to her, saying that he can't be her partner anymore. Determined, she replies that both of them are supposed to be a team. She comforts him, saying that he shouldn't deal with the situation on his own. Still turning his back to her, he says that it is not her problem and he is solely to blame for what happened. It's me. Hi. I'm the problem, it's me. Sorry, his statement reminds me of Taylor's anti-hero. #Swiftie. Rosaline is feeling an urge to pry answers from him, so she lets her emotions win and asks him what is troubling him. Realizing that she deserves to know what happened to him, he starts narrating how his experience being on the verge of saving someone he treasures, but only to fall short and fail halfway. That it was his fault for losing such a person, and he goes on days being haunted by regret. Meanwhile, hearing his story reminds her of those days with Romeo. The grief she feels from his story seems like a mirror of herself when she lost Romeo. She concludes that she and the Count are in the same shoes. The only difference is that unlike her, who has moved on, he is still stuck in his past. Realizing how much pain he's bearing by himself, she tells him that she will not force him anymore to do the painting and that she can look for another partner. Bowing to his back, she expresses her gratitude to him and walks away. Surprisingly, he stops and closes the distance between them. He then offers her to provide indirect assistance through his connections. When she questions his decision, he firmly expresses his commitment to helping her. Commit romantically too, please! In the Imperial Palace, Rosaline graces the prince, but he mocks her because she seems to not have anything prepared. Well, we all know that our girl is a fighter and doesn't back down from challenges. Can't wait to see what trick she has up her sleeve. The judging day begins for the competition, and the capital is hyped up about it, looking forward to who will win. The different nobles then begin presenting their art to the prince, who's getting bored as he criticizes in his mind the people feasting in front of him. Even though they seem to show interest in art, everyone just wants to play their part in the competition to show off their wealth. But then, there's another person he thinks is an exception from these people and wonders what she's been up to. With boredom striking him, he remembers what Rosaline had told him regarding why she wasn't able to present him with the art for the competition. But she told him that she had prepared something for him and in hopes that he'll like it. Snapping from his thoughts of her, he is hoping that she would at least save him from the boredom he is in. Now, as everyone is anticipating knowing, the prince declares his winner for the competition. It is none other than Bernardo Capulet with his commissioned artist. This is so unfair! If Bernardo didn't destroy the Count's painting, for sure Rosaline together with Count Paris would win. No. Bernardo's painting will now be displayed in the front square for all the people to see. As they parade going to the square, they observe that there's a commotion going on. Strangely, the citizens keep thanking the prince as they cross paths with him. Despite his royal guard's request to stay put, he walks on his way to check what's causing the fuss. Surprisingly, it turns out that Rosaline is distributing a piece of paper to everyone, and he asks for one. The content of the paper shocks everyone. What could be on the paper that earned such a reaction from them? Bernardo is annoyed by the crowd that's blocking his way. He angrily shouts, commanding them to move. But he gets interrupted by Lady Capulet, who also happens to be holding the piece of paper that Rosaline is distributing. The lady commends what Rosaline has done, making Bernardo's face pale. Lady Claudia, who also got a hold of the paper, gets shocked upon checking it. It turns out that on the paper is a sketch portrait of none other than the prince. The other thing that is making the portrait so controversial is that it was done with the help of the commoners. Many would surely want to disqualify the sketch as part of the competition, but it would be an impossible thing since the portraits bear the sign of Count Paris and his artisans. The sign holds such power that disregarding it would mean that they're facing the most influential group of the city. Woo! The power that our Count holds! And the cunningness of our Rosaline! Girl is on fire! They better bow down to them! On the other hand, Lady Capulet, who is amazed by her granddaughter's stunt, tells her two sons Geronimo and Bernardo that she'll let Rosaline partake in the family meeting and let her express her opinions. Her statement angers the two, and they find it very unacceptable. That's what you get. Clearly annoyed by how they respond to her words, she lashes out at them for questioning her decision. She adds that Rosaline might not have won the competition, but she surely won something bigger, and it's the prince's heart. She keeps on complimenting Rosaline for her creativity in playing with the messy game of politics and highly acknowledges her. As she well deserves. So proud of our girl. Meanwhile, Rosaline, who's standing out brightly in the crowd, glances at Paris, who is just in the distance. She ponders how he has been of a great help to her. Through his connections, she was able to meet the best artist who aided in pulling off her stunt, which shocked everyone. He was at her back throughout her entire plan, fully supporting her in every way he could. He's such a man. No, he is the man. While Paris, on the other hand, keeps staring at her from afar, he comments on how Rosaline for him is quite something. And it seems like he isn't the only one who thinks the same, as she has now captured the prince's attention. Suddenly, someone catches Rosaline's eye. In the midst of the crowd, there are two figures that cover themselves in hooded cloaks. The other figure turns his head toward Rosaline, and it turns out that he is Romeo. You mother F! My apologies. I just can't help but get heated up with this guy. Wondering about the festivities happening in the capital, Juliet, who's with Romeo, asks him if they should see what's happening for themselves. He agrees, but when he sees Rosaline being crowned by the prince, he changes his mind and suggests they should keep going, reasoning that there might be someone who can recognize them. On the day of the judgment of the competition, it is Bernardo who has been officially proclaimed as the winner. But it is a short-lived winning moment for him, as the memory of his victory blows past in the people's minds. That's what you get for doing such dirty tricks. Meanwhile, even though Rosaline is not held as the official winner of the competition, what she accomplished is beyond valuable and will go on for many years to come. You go, girl. You deserve everything after going through those series of mischief thrown at you. In the house of the Capulets, a letter bearing the royal seal has arrived for Rosaline, making her wonder what it could be about. While descending the stairs while reading the letter, she surprisingly sees Tybalt with her son. When she asks when he arrived, he replies that he just arrived and adds that he happens to be teaching Mino some skills. He then asks the kid to greet her. With such a great posture, Mino greets his mother so gracefully. Such a charming kid. After commending him for doing a great job, Tybalt turns his attention to Rosaline and asks her about the letter she's holding. She answers him that it is just about Prince Aeschylus summoning her for a private audience. He then congratulates her, and she thanks him in return. It seems like he wants to say something to her, but when she asks if he has, he is quick to say there's nothing. His expression tells me he has something to say to her, though. Responding to the letter sent to her, she arrives at the palace with the thought that she didn't expect to be back there so soon. On her way to Prince Aeschylus, with the royal butler leading the way, she stumbles upon Lady Claudia together with her two other ladies. They are clearly annoyed by her presence, and they don't even return her greetings. Such rudeness! Truly, they are just jealous and bitter. Arriving at the outside of the palace, Rosaline is escorted to the private lake. What welcomes her is the sight of the prince bathing in the lake. Surprising her, Aeschylus catches a fish by his hand. He then acknowledges her and even invites her to join him in the lake, adding that the cool water of the lake truly takes the heat off. Would you mind if we joined you, Your Highness? We need to cool down with the sight of you bathing naked in that lake, too. Maintaining the formalities between them, Rosaline refuses his offer. Observing her being so stiff and formal around him, he tells her that she can loosen up a bit. After exchanging some words regarding the intention of the letter she received from him, she directly asks why he called for her. He tells her that he had taken an interest in her, especially in what she pulled during the competition finale. He continues, saying that he sees some parts of himself in her, the feeling of being watched and where everyone sees you rise and fall. He continues to compliment her as he draws closer to her, making his naked body more exposed. Oh my God, stop! We're gonna melt, dear prince. Not long after, the distance between them is very close, and his torso is very exposed. It's only the water that's covering his lower body. Flustered, Rosaline blushingly tells the prince to get something to put on, but he just keeps messing around with her reaction. Just as she's having her inner thoughts that the prince being near is not good for her heart, the prince asks her if she would like to marry him. OMG, what just happened? We were just witnessing his well-toned body, and the next thing we know, he offers her marriage? What about us? Rosaline is taken aback by what Aeschylus has just declared to her. After recovering from it and composing herself, she questions his offer. He expects her reaction to say that it will be natural for her to think that his offer is a joke. However, he shares the possibilities if they were to get married and that both of them would make a wonderful pair. Not siding with his offer, she refuses it and brings up her son, saying that it is her Mino above anything else. So he gives up on playing with her. But what she doesn't realize is that the distance between them has become so close. He even poses, flaunting his body. This is a good picture for wallpaper, but so unnecessary, Your Highness. Normal people don't just have conversations with others while they're naked. Not that we're complaining, though. Like, at all. Out of nowhere, a white cloth flies into the prince's face, and he is asked to put it on. It turns out to be Paris. He quickly checks on Rosaline, and she assures him that she is fine. I smell a slight jealousy somewhere in France. The prince defends himself, saying that he didn't mean anything indecent, but Paris nags at him and says that he's worried about Rosaline. She then assures him to stop worrying, since she reveals that the prince was just joking before he arrived. When he asks what the prince was joking about, the prince nonchalantly replies that he tried to ask for her hand in marriage but got rejected. Confused by the prince's strange actions, he questions him if something happened or if someone is threatening him. But the prince assures him that there is none and remarks that a storm is brewing and that it's approaching fast. What could he mean by that? The prince then asks if they are up for some coffee. As they go together on their way, the prince looks behind him and ponders that the two are kind of people he rarely meets, so he intends to keep them by his side. I agree with you on that one, gorgeous prince. As the night envelops the town, in an alley, Tybalt faces a mysterious cloaked man. He talks to the man, saying that their meetings have become more frequent. The man faces Tybalt with a knife in his hand, saying that his master greets him. The man swiftly attacks Tybalt, but he is quick to dodge it, grabs the knife from him, and holds him hostage with it. Out of nowhere, a group of cloaked men appears and attacks Tybalt, making him lie on the ground bleeding. The man who seems to lead the group talks to Tybalt, saying that his inevitable downfall will begin tonight. Tybalt recognizes the man's voice and refers to him as Romeo's lapdog. Tybalt is tied to a chair, and when his consciousness comes back, he faces a man who greets him. With a sly smile on his face, Tybalt calls the man Mercutio, and he just gets smacked hard in the face. Ouch! That must have hurt so much. After exchanging insults with each other, Mercutio is about to punch Tybalt again when a loud voice booms, stopping him. Romeo appears and greets the beaten-up Tybalt. Tybalt asks Romeo what he has done to put him in such a poor state. Romeo confronts him about working closely with Juliet's father. Tybalt then defends himself, saying that it is just a misunderstanding, and confirms that he's still on his side. He then asks him to release him so he can explain himself well, to which Romeo agrees. On the other hand, the palace gets busy preparing for a celebration. It is planned to be the grandest revelry of the season. Unexpectedly, the prince asks for Rosaline's help in the preparation of the 3-day-long celebration. The prince greatly appreciates her assistance despite his last-minute request. The two discuss different matters to take into account for the party, and she is very enthusiastic about it. They then decide to take a break, and on their way, they meet the high priest. After the high priest greets his highness, he shamelessly insults Rosaline, but he's frozen after the prince threatens him. That's what you get for messing with our girl. Thank you, your highness. She points out to him that the insults won't just stop because of a mere warning from him, but he explains that he doesn't like the idea of them talking down to her in front of him. They continue their conversation about power and trust. When both of them check the town, a commotion is happening. Just after they ask what the commotion is all about, they hear the high priest exclaiming that there's a sign from heaven. The high priest continues his statement, revealing to everyone that the tombs of Romeo and Juliet have been found empty. Hold up. Romeo and Juliet and heaven don't coincide with each other at all. Rosaline is shocked and left pale by the announcement. Lurking in the crowd with them is Mercutio, holding a small cross. And so, the spectacular celebration has commenced. It is a night of glamour and splendor, and yet Rosaline feels anxiety curdling in her stomach. No pleasant conversation and champagne can erase her worries for her son. Leaving Mino behind is a hard decision for her. Rosaline must be so worried for our dear Mino. A hand on her shoulder pulls her out of her reverie. The handsome Count Paris tells her that she chose not to bring Mino to that place. He says that she is wise for doing so because despite the lively facade, there is a brewing tension among the nobles. Rosaline agrees with him. This moment is not suitable for a child. Paris questions her certainty about taking her current path, one filled with risks and uncertainties, especially since this means that she'll often have to spend time away from her son. He tells her that she can still step back and reassess. However, determination radiates from our Rosie when she declares that there is nothing to reassess. For Mino and for her, she has to go out there and get as much help as she can. Rosaline knows he's worried, but she assures him that she'll be fine. He reaches to touch her as he vows to always be there for her. Aw, he's so sweet. How do I get a man like Paris? Somebody tell me. Even though she is taken aback, she is genuinely thankful to him. Then, with a charming look on his face, he tells her how beautiful she looks, describing her as a gem. Oh, Paris, stop it! If I were Rosie, I would have already melted by now. Such a charmer. Right then, Prince Aeschylus joins them, annoyed that he is being left out once again. As the three of them settle into their little group, the noble begins talking about Rosaline and how she wants them to bear witness to the power she's gaining. They remark that, as a Capulet, she'll be a force to reckon with. Not long after, the high priest catches everyone's attention. After acknowledging Prince Aeschylus and Count Paris for the celebration, he makes an astonishing announcement, one that leaves the nobles of Verona doubting their eyes. He declares that someone will rejoin them that day. And as he said, a figure who for a long time belonged in their imagination walks gracefully back into their lives. The radiant Juliet Capulet comes to reclaim her spot in Verona's social hierarchy. The darling of the people appears before them like an impossible apparition, alive and well despite her supposed death. Juliet's father is more than shocked to see the daughter he has mourned now standing very much alive. With tears streaking down his face, he runs to embrace his daughter. Among those who can't believe their eyes are Rosaline and Paris. When Paris notices Rosaline shaking, he is quick to comfort her, asking if she is ill. To make matters even worse, the high priest declares that another person will join them, and in comes Romeo Montague, the reason for all the sufferings Rosie has had to go through. Ugh, the audacity of this man to show his face! You may be devastatingly handsome, Romeo, but don't you dare mess with Rosie again! Alas, together they now stand. The infamous Romeo and Juliet is a vision to behold. Not at all dead like they were supposed to be. The high priest appeases the crowd, proclaiming to understand their confusion. He tells the people that this is proof that God has not abandoned them. What brings the nobles into even more disarray is when the high priest reveals that Romeo Montague and Juliet Capulet are in love, apparent star-crossed lovers. The high priest continues, telling everyone that the couple aims to end the feud between their family with their love. Ha! How deceitful! If only these people knew what lies behind their perfect image. The high priest then also reveals that there are people who seek to tear them apart, people who are driven by political interest and gain profit from violence. Apparently, those who are jealous of their love poison them to death, causing their dream of love and peace to be overtaken by greedy men. The people are in an uproar, unsure of what to make of the things being revealed to them. Speculations begin sprouting here and there, mostly doubting the credibility of the story entirely. However, the high priest convinces them that Romeo and Juliet did, not in fact, deceive them. He beseeches them to condemn instead the people who aim to harm them. However, people are still resistant, pointing out that it was their families that drenched the streets of Verona with blood. They question if they are really in danger when it is their family's feud that's been throwing their city into chaos. But there are those who seem to be taken by their so-called love story, sympathizing with the couple's hardships. A love story? The only thing that Romeo can love is himself! Excuse me, I'm getting ahead of myself. Meanwhile, Prince Aeschylus knows that the people are divided and that he can't just directly refute the high priest's narrative. After all, the church's will is God's will. Going against it is considered blasphemous. How backward. The prince is not willing to break the fickle peace in the land. Unexpectedly, the one who speaks out is Paris. He steps forward and scathingly asks why the heads of the families were not aware of such dangers lurking around Romeo and Juliet. He points out that Bernardo, Juliet's father, is as stunned as everyone else. Mercutio then steps up, claiming to have fought for the couple in their time of need. He mocks Paris by saying that he can even show him his scars if he wants. Oh, shut it, you evil-looking man. Rather than respond, Paris continues his line of questioning. At first, Rosaline notes that he is holding his ground, but then she sees his shaking hand. She realizes that the Count is as fazed by this unwelcome revelation as her. However, her momentary reverie is interrupted when an additional voice joins the conversation. Tybalt actually vouches for the credibility of Romeo and Juliet's story. Rosaline feels betrayed, and Paris is seething in rage. Tybalt playfully tells Paris that he does not deserve his accusatory glare, claiming that he speaks in full confidence. He evidently was helping them in the shadows for some time now. Romeo then chooses to finally speak. He approaches Paris, saying that he knows that he shared a history with his Juliet. He leans toward him and quietly whispers that he is not as special to her as he thought he was. Ugh, this guy! Honestly, no amount of face cards can save you from my hatred! Paris is 100 times better than you, just so you know. When things have settled down, Rosaline is on the balcony trying to make sense of the situation. However, there is one thing she needs to do. She must not lose herself. Rosaline watches as her living nightmare unfolds before her. As she witnesses Romeo and Juliet dance gracefully like they've done it all their lives, she knows that this time around, the possibility of waking up will not save her. Lies and betrayal are like diseases that will never go away. Count Paris, like sunshine amidst a raging storm, approaches her. He is distressed upon seeing her so detached, swept away by her thoughts, and so he asks her to dance. He takes her hand and off they go to the dance floor. Rosaline feels like herself again. Paris's eyes call her back to the present, grounding her once again. His soft touches are like telling her that everything will be all right. He tells her sincerely that he wants to help her figure things out. Gosh, I want them to be together already. It is so obvious that they are slowly and steadily falling for each other. If only those two could just get out of the way. I'm sorry, Juliet, you haven't done anything particularly bad yet, but I'm biased. Of course, their moment is ruined by the nosy nobles causing Rosaline a snake for taking opportunities. One even speculates that Rosie was involved in Romeo and Juliet's poisoning. Jeez, some people really can't help sticking their noses in other people's business. Get a life. Paris has his arms around Rosie after hearing those comments, giving her comfort as he glares at the other nobles. That is when Prince Aeschylus clears his throat to get everyone's attention. He then openly gives thanks to Lady Rosaline for making the last-minute preparation for the celebration possible. He compliments her skills and wisdom, crediting her for the success of the party. Aww, Aeschylus can be sweet as well, since I'm pretty much invested in the Rosaline-Paris tandem. Perhaps I have a chance with you, my prince. Totally kidding, of course. Or am I? He then goes to Rosie and invites her to dance, telling Paris it is his turn now. And so in front of those meddling nobles, the two of them dance to their heart's content. In your face, Romeo Montague! Your last season. Later on, Rosie is pouring herself a drink when Mercutio approaches her, giving her backhanded compliments and mentioning that it does not bode well for a woman with a child to be dancing with men who are not its father. Oh my gosh! I knew there was a reason why I hated this guy. Not one to back down, she tells him to go get a dance partner instead of wasting his sweet time chatting. She emphasizes that unlike them, she doesn't go around crashing parties and disturbing the peace. Mercutio is offended for a second, but then he smirks. The infuriating man mentions her losing sight of her own son. Rosaline freezes and instantly turns around, searching for Tybalt. Don't you dare, Tybalt! Is it not bad enough that you betrayed her? When she does not find him, she panics and does not even notice Paris calling out to her. All she can think of is her son. Rosaline rushes to her home and she is met with Tybalt. She instantly goes off on him, demanding to know where her son is. Tybalt smiles at her, saying that she is too late for he has already accomplished what he has set out to do. What did you do, Tybalt? Rosaline is horrified, shaking in fear for her son. He then tells her that he was just having a chat with the little one about the importance of family. Oh, thank God. Good thing he's not that evil. Tybalt then broaches the topic of Mino's inevitable meeting with his father. He mentions that he was just teaching the boy some valuable skills. He tells her that Mino will grow to resemble Romeo even more, and eventually, he will grow to resent her. Rosaline is baffled that he even knows about Mino's parentage. Her cousin continues his speech, telling her that she should have stayed in the shadows and hid behind the walls with her son, claiming that if she had done that, she'd have kept him safe. Tybalt is being cruel. He tells her she is powerless despite everything she has achieved. He emphasizes that no matter how much she climbs, she still hasn't made any progress. As he speaks, he backs her against a shelf, and Rosie is so devastated that she knocks against it and falls to the ground. To his surprise, Rosaline dismisses the maid who tries to help her and stands up like nothing has happened. Our girl Rosie will not let you bully her, Tybalt. She reminds him firmly that her son is a possible heir to the Capulet household, and it is only right that she step out of the shadows so she and her son won't be isolated from the world. She reminds him as well that she did not voluntarily step out of her accord. She did so because of the people who have wronged her. She calls him a fool for thinking that she'll go back to how she was before. Romeo will have to fight her to the death before he can get his claws on her son. You go, girl. You show those people what you're made of. With a will as strong as steel, she vows to carve her own path and take her son with her. Tybalt is dumbfounded by the sheer tenacity of his cousin, commenting that her resolve might just scare off Romeo's goons. He pats her head and tells her to remember these burning emotions, for she will need it. That's right, our queen has an iron backbone indeed. Unbeknownst to her, Tybalt actually reports to their grandmother. He tells her that Rosaline is something else and that she might be the one who comes closest to the matriarch standards. Trusting his judgment, she tells him to have Rosaline come to her. The truth is, Tybalt went to visit Mino to tell him something important. He wants him to always remember that his mother loves him very much. He urges the child to always try to make her smile. Oh, Tybalt is actually a sweetheart. I misjudged you. I hope that you are truthful this time around. In the Capulet main residence, Rosaline meets with her grandmother. After a moment of silence, mostly because the matriarch is deep in thought, they begin their conversation. She tells her granddaughter that, like her, Rosaline will not sit idly as the winds around them change course. When Rosaline asks her to speak clearly, she answers that she wants Rosaline to prove that she is trustworthy. Rosaline describes how strong her ties are to the royal palace, especially with the prince. She offers to be her eyes and ears there. Although she is quite guilty that she is making it seem like her friendship with Aeschylus is not genuine, she has to let her grandmother hear what she wants. She then boldly emphasizes that she will want something in return. The matriarch is incredulous by her tenacity, but she pushes on. She even questions if the lady is thinking about being friends with the Montagues, to which the lady answers that she is not a fool to believe that two people playing lovers will resolve a centuries-old conflict. The matriarch also implies that Juliet cannot be trusted. She then tasks Rosaline to investigate Romeo Montague. She can't let that volatile young man run wild. She also mentions that he has Tybalt wrapped around his fingers. After her grandmother is done speaking, Rosaline takes the opportunity to discuss what she wants in return. She wants her to acknowledge her son as a future successor. Of course, the head of the Capulet is surprised, but then she smiles and agrees with her. With that, Rosaline vows to not fail her. The matriarch realizes that Rosaline reminds her of her younger self. Meanwhile, in a Montague residence, Romeo's parents await their son. His father is particularly annoyed that he is making them wait to this extent. Not long after, the door opens to reveal the man of the hour. In front of his shocked parents, Romeo tells them that he's missed them and that he is there for what is his. Ugh, I don't think I can dislike him even more. There simply isn't enough space in my hatred jar. At the palace, Rosaline is walking the halls as she contemplates the deal that she has secured with her grandmother. She is relieved that she has improved her arsenal for the upcoming battle. However, she knows that she can't be complacent. She needs to get closer to the prince in order to maximize her time in the palace. If you ask me, I wouldn't mind getting close to the prince as well. I mean, look at him. It's illegal to look that good. When she reaches the end of the hall, she hears arguments behind a door left ajar. Inside, the nobles and the prince are talking about the recent events that shook their city. They want Aeschylus to act immediately. When the prince catches sight of her, he visibly brightens and asks her how long she's been standing there. Rosaline feels all eyes fall on her, and she hesitantly steps inside, apologizing for the intrusion. One of the nobles, Lord Ricci, comments that she looks like Luciana when she was younger, and speaks awfully like the matriarch too. He then asks her whether her grandmother is unfazed by the events of last night. Before she can answer, another noble speaks up. As the head of public safety, he requests that the prince give an order. The return of Romeo Montague and Juliet Capulet means that the violence in the streets may resurface. The prince is obviously stressed by their complaining, stating that everyone should calm down. He is annoyed that Romeo and Juliet's return occurred when high-profile figures are in the palace. Now he has to deal with them this early. Still, the nobles continue to speak their paranoid opinions. They are convinced that the Montagues and the Capulets have no more reason for a truce. They want the prince to do something to keep their business and property safe from the feud. At that moment, Rosaline is clearly not impressed, so she decides to finally speak up. She tells the nobles that her family would never want those things to happen. She assures them that violence is the last thing on her grandmother's mind. However, rather than listening to her, Lord Ricci mocks her. He calls her words worthless, insulting her for not having influence in her family. What an arrogant jerk! He even mentions Mino, telling her not to talk during important conversations. Can I reach from over here to smack him right in the face? Because I won't hesitate. The prince is about to react, his face distorted in rage, but he is beaten to it. Count Paris, who has just arrived, menacingly threatens to ram his mouth into the floor to eat dust so he can see if they indeed taste worthless. Whoa! Paris does have a rough side! I mean, that threat is quite intense. Paris stands next to Rosie and reminds the crowd that she is an honorable member of the Capulet family and that they ought to respect her. Right on, Paris! The prince approaches them, apologizing for what happened. He tells Rosie that they can meet up later after handling the nobles. Paris then states that he is leaving as well, since he only came there to give the prince the documents he requested. Count Paris and Rosaline exit the palace together. Paris then expresses that she shouldn't be treated like how she was treated back there. He calls it unfair that those people have a distorted view of her when she is the most loving person he's ever met. I just love how Paris is always there to defend her, and knows just how great a person she is. Rosaline replies that it doesn't really matter as long as Paris gets to see what is true about her. She tells him that he is a good friend and that she will do her best to be a better one to him. Their relationship is so wholesome. Their friendship is strong, but it's only a matter of time before this becomes something else. Paris then asks her to go somewhere with him, and that is how they find themselves in a carriage with little Mino. The boy is so happy to be out that his happiness is contagious. Paris takes him to a local restaurant where he used to sneak to when he was younger. He knows that Mino will love the food. The serving woman recognizes Paris and he orders what he usually gets for Mino. The woman even teases him by assuming that Mino is his son. He will be soon enough. Just saying. While they're enjoying their meal, they're having a casual conversation until Paris mentions that he wants to talk about Rosaline's cousin, Juliet. Oh, revelations. How exciting. Count Paris is surely not that much of an emotional person, yet for this instance, it seems he's willing to be just that. But not in a sentimental way. As the prince recounts a chapter of his life with Juliet in it, he seems to question the very fate or the stars that bring them their destiny. He doesn't argue that destiny can lead us to the people we meet in life, nor does he have a problem with the fact that fate will always bring us to a certain point where our actions are the cause. All the while, he's thinking of Juliet and her warm smile, right until he imagines a morbid thought of her, right as he questions whether or not fate can allow the start of a destiny, a story, which is already doomed right at the beginning. The beginning of which sees the Count alone in his estate, doing nothing but painting. But as everyone knows it, the peace in Verona is nothing like this solemn, rather quiet morning he has. In fact, the continuous quarrel between the Montagues and Capulets are again at an all-time high. So much so that the prince is worrying about the damages it causes the civilians, and the growing impact and division of the nobility. And so his proposed solution involves the help of his friend, Count Paris. Apologizing in advance for putting him in that position, the prince says that he and the Capulets have reached an agreement. So long as the Count marries Juliet, the family will stop engaging in fights with the Montagues. Well, according to Arranged Marriage 101, agreements like this do not end well. Without even the tiniest change in his expression, Paris merely says he'll think about it, as if the weight of the country's survival doesn't rest upon his decision. Still knowing that this is the position in which the Count's stronghold could further strengthen, Paris perhaps thought to commit to the prince's deal. This leads to the Count to attend numerous dinners and other social gatherings of the sort. In one such social gathering, a ball to be precise, he meets Juliet, the very person who would make him question destiny and the reason for their meeting. Anyway, Paris isn't one for first impressions, or parties for that matter, because as the ball progresses into the night, he finds himself alone at a balcony, a glass of wine in his hand. Suddenly, Juliet approaches him, asking him if he's at all a fan of parties. Ever the blunt man, Paris answers no, saying there's no room for flattery in his life. He can be really cold when he wants to be. Eventually, their conversation steers towards the Count's marriage proposal, to which Paris's only reason is for politics when Juliet asks him. In their talks, however, Paris notices the empty eyes of Juliet, contrasting with her bright smile as the girl talks about her role in her family's conflicts. Somehow, Paris has gotten the feeling that he wanted to help Juliet, without proper reason and without even a regard for anything else. However, he's unsure how to do so, and as Juliet walks back inside of the party, he becomes aware that perhaps he doesn't have the right to do so. Or maybe, he wonders if it's because of his own reservations. Untrue to his words, he still finds a way to help Juliet anyway, even offering to back out of the deal from his side. Still, Juliet insists it must be her, but as Paris narrates, it marks the downhill path of their shared destiny. Poor Paris. He must have loved her despite the situation they were in. As the wedding plans fall through, Paris fails to notice Juliet's feelings, who at every instance still shows her smile and assurance that everything's all right. The inevitability of trouble during those times, unfortunately, cannot escape even the Count Paris himself. At that moment, Paris finds himself getting the answer to one of his most curious thoughts, of whether or not Juliet's eyes would always stay empty. Unfortunately, the very first tiny sparks of emotion that he sees within her are that of disappointment and betrayal, the kind he never wished to see on her. The Count could do nothing but look away as Juliet makes her way out of the crowd, away from where he was. Paris could then do nothing but watch Juliet from afar. He's watching at the same distance when she was in Romeo's arms, and when she was supposedly dead, lying in her crypt as the rain from that day poured on. How heartbreaking this must be. As he did before, Paris questions whether the stars that control their destiny could have ever told him of this tragedy. And yet, He proceeds to blame himself, even though he acknowledges that things would turn out the way they did the moment their destiny began. While looking at the ruined portrait of Juliet made by none other than himself, he anguishes at the fact that he thinks he didn't do enough for her at all. No wonder he was so lifeless from the very beginning. He was carrying this much burden. Back to the present, the former apologizes about how he seems to have suddenly let it all out. But she only smiles, saying that she appreciates the Count for sharing and that there's no cause to apologize for such things. Even Mino voices out his adorable opinion to at least help the Count with accepting his right to vent out. He is so adorable. Can I keep him in my pocket? That way, none of those pompous nobles, especially Romeo, can reach him. Anyway, Rosaline praises Paris for being brave enough to admit and even talk about things like that, to which she could only wish she could do the same as well. Paris, on the other hand, assures her that she does, and he has never doubted the things she's capable of, not even for a second. In his thoughts, he realizes that this is the first instance in which he has heard Rosaline genuinely laugh, and he again curses fate for sealing away what was to him a sweet melody. Look at them! Just fall in love already! Apologies for being impatient. I just want them to be happy. And so, with a little bit of time left for the afternoon, Paris suggests that they go visit the marketplace. The group then gets ready to go, and Paris says goodbye to Maria and thanks her as well for her food. The store owner, on the other hand, advises the young Count to keep Rosaline at his side more often, as apparently she had never seen him so alive. Even she senses something brewing between these two. Well, compared to his recent state, that is. Nonetheless, Paris seems to figure this out for himself. With Rosaline and Mino saying their goodbyes as well, they head on out to the marketplace. As it seems, the local market is more than just a supply for food and goods. There's food stalls, attractions one would only find in circus shows, like magic acts, for example, and even street commission paintings, all of which Paris, Rosaline, and Mino happily participated and had fun on. But perhaps the highlight of their day was when they danced in the streets with the locals eagerly cheering them on. They will make such a perfect little family. Rosaline's beauty glows like a flower in the afternoon sun. But as destiny would have it, it seems Romeo and Juliet are at the same market. It's Juliet who manages to glance first at her ex-fiancé, and with a breath, curiously noting a child atop his shoulders and a woman by his side. Great! These two appear to ruin the moment. Again! Both Paris and Rosaline are bewildered when they spot Romeo and Juliet, and right at the end of their happy visit to the marketplace. Still, it is Juliet and her bright, bubbly personality that breaks the ice between the four of them, greeting her cousin Rosaline first, and saying how she missed her because they haven't had a chance to talk the other night before. Juliet is kind. I do hope she remains that way despite being under the influence of that wretched Romeo. With little animosity to her cousin, Rosaline replies, saying that she felt the same, but she had an urgent matter to attend to, which is why they hadn't talked yesterday. Since they'd see each other in the main residence anyway, Juliet doesn't seem to fret about it too much. But what did catch her attention is the fact that Count Paris is seemingly with Rosaline. Still, with her bright smile, she notes how a lot really has happened while she was away. Greeting Paris as if she hasn't lied about her death, Juliet bows formally to the Count. Paris could only utter her name in response, and not a word after or before addressed to her after that. Still, his greeting is meant to not give any offense to Juliet, and thankfully, she doesn't anyway. Instead, she greets Mino, saying that Tybalt had much to say about the boy. Uneasiness creeps in Rosaline as Juliet regards her son, so much so that she looks at Paris for support. She has a very good reason to be uncomfortable, really, as Romeo in the background curls a rather evil smile as he lets Juliet talk to them. Ugh, my blood boils every time I see this guy. Despite that, Rosaline still introduces Mino to Juliet and urges him to call her auntie, much to Juliet's delight. The boy's happiness seems to put Rosaline at ease, and she and Paris share a smile at the warmth his laugh provides. Unfortunately, evil still finds a way to ruin their day, as Juliet calls on Romeo to look at Mino too. Reveling in his chance to degrade Rosaline further, Romeo acts as if he doesn't know the boy, and further insults Rosaline by saying that Mino would also be the name he would have chosen if he was the boy's father. If that wasn't enough, he reaches out to touch Mino's head, but Rosaline is quick to move her son out of the way. Juliet takes notice of this, but not of Romeo's malicious actions, and so asks Rosaline if something's wrong. Rosaline turns her back and apologizes, saying that they have to go. Romeo tries to spin the situation to the couple overreacting, but thankfully, Paris stands for Rosaline and discreetly threatens Romeo by reminding him that they are far away from the capital, and where they are, lots of incidents fall on nobles like him. Without another word, the Count leads Rosaline and Mino away. Unfortunately, Juliet takes the events as her making a mistake that made Rosaline and Paris go away, so she seeks comfort from Romeo. And of course, nothing but comforting yet controlling answers are all that come out of Romeo's mouth. As it turns out, their plight still isn't over, as Paris's words indeed come true. As the locals take notice of them, they recognize the two as Romeo and Juliet, lovers who are supposedly dead. Aside from the apparent faking of their death, the crowd also condemns them for showing their faces despite all the trouble they had put their family through. What's more, they branded them as devil spawns because of their supposed escape from death. And so, the two got run out of the market by an angry crowd. All that leads to Juliet in tears, but mainly due to anger. She agrees to Romeo's plan, and he gets his most evil smile yet as he finally gets Juliet to his side. What are you planning, you two-faced manipulative man? Away from the bustling sounds of the city, a simple, happy home looks to have finally set themselves up for success. With their business booming, the young couple celebrates because finally they can send their son Theo to an apprenticeship. Unfortunately, the bright hope that shines in their life is only there for but a brief moment, as a few minutes after the closed shop, a loud rap echoes from the door. A look of horror and realization dawns on their faces as they remember that they had already locked the outside door. Now their fates are left to the darkness. Oh, is Verona back to how it was before? Meanwhile, it seems that the city has been filled with malice at its every corner, even the church. A voice approaches the friar from behind as he kneels in prayer, only for that voice to be revealed belonging to none other than Romeo Montague. As it seems, the two are accomplices to whatever plans they had concocted, but the priest seems surprised that Romeo would show himself in consecutive days, something he teases the boy over. Ugh, of course, we have another hypocrite in our midst. A priest that's doing evil things? How ironic. Romeo, on the other hand, shows he doesn't care for the friar's jest and is only there to accept the latter's offer. As to why it took so long, he was apparently waiting on Juliet's opinion on the matter. Upon the mention of Juliet's name, the friar questions the exact reasons as to why Romeo feels the need to essentially coddle the girl in the first place, when Romeo himself is the one who sought help all those years ago, and it's the boy's own ambition to conquer the two families. The friar is wary of Juliet's unpredictability, but Romeo argues that it is a problem that only he has to handle. But what's more important, it seems Romeo is becoming impatient at the friar's plans, saying that whatever miracle he's working isn't actually that as far-reaching as he would have liked. When questions about his patience surfaces, Romeo bluntly says that spending time as a dead person is exactly the reason as to why his patience has receded somewhat. The friar's only assurance to him, however, is to wait for the fruit of the seeds of chaos that they planted to grow. Instead of giving into impatience, it's better to nurture the chaos they have made and remove whatever obstacle they have before its eventual growth. In his analogy, a glass kingdom can easily shatter nonetheless. And when asked for his plans, the friar creeps in with a malicious smile on his face as he asks Romeo to wait and see. The two's solitude is broken, however, when one of the church's acolytes rushes in to bring an orphan boy, Theo, from the brutal burglary attacks that claim the life of his parents. Romeo dismisses the fact that the friar is somehow, discreetly at that, collecting children, but the friar manages to spin the conversation around. While on the topic of children, the friar makes an observation about how Rosaline's son bears a strong resemblance to Romeo. As per usual, he denies ever having a connection with that woman, much less her son. Liar! Ugh! How can someone this handsome be so hateful? However, as Romeo exits the church, he bids his friend to make sure that this supposed weakness cannot be used by the cheeky priest. On the third and final day of the celebrations, Count Paris and Rosaline find themselves in the presence of the prince, as all three share a table for this particular day's event. The prince is still a bit stressed from all the meetings he had to attend, and as of now, he still doesn't have the luxury to take a rest, just as his companions suggest. Apparently, the entire city has been hit with a surge of burglary criminal activities as of late. Knowing the nobles, the prince argues that although the festivities are keeping them at bay for now, they are likely to cause a lot more riots pertaining as to how they can keep their family safe amidst the chaos. And as Paris plainly puts it, they're likely to blame the prince for his irresponsibility on this matter. But actually, Paris is not at all listening intently to the country's politics as the prince thinks. Or even Rosaline, for that matter. The Count follows her gaze, which seems uncharacteristically distant. It seems she's been distracted like that since earlier. Paris thinks to himself, all back to the moment where Rosaline had shielded her son away from Romeo. He had felt her fear back then, as if Romeo is something even worse than seeing a ghost. This leads him to wonder what had Romeo done to poor Rosaline to garner such a reaction from her. But more than that, seeing her suffering silently like that doesn't sit right with him. And just like before, he feels a burning desire to help her right then and there. Unfortunately, he holds himself back, as he thinks he may not be the one she needs right now. Suddenly, he sees anger in Rosaline's previously distant gaze, and finds that she's looking at Romeo and Juliet, who have just arrived at the party. Paris himself clenches his fist at the thought of how useless he feels as of now, but rather fortunately, in what is perhaps the most peculiar way of saving them from their own thoughts, they get pulled back to the present when the prince calls both him and Rosaline out for not listening to him. Still, the party goes on, as they say, and soon enough a sweet, vibrant music echoes throughout the event as the orchestra has started playing. For Rosaline, it's a tune filled with melancholy and nostalgia, but the memories of the familiar song, along with the face that makes her remember, brings her nothing but pain. As if to play a cruel trick on her, Romeo suddenly approaches her and asks her for a dance, right to the song that they used to when they were lovers. The prince and Count Paris could do nothing but stay back out of courtesy, and Rosaline can only rely on herself. She asks why Romeo hadn't asked Juliet, but the latter replied that she was resting. Calling upon old time's sake, Romeo extends his hands, and Rosaline has no choice but to accept. Paris admittedly says he doesn't know why it bothers him as he watches Romeo take Rosaline away. The two twirl away, mesmerizing people as they dance more gracefully than most. The speculation that it's a performance as good as that is because their bodies are already attuned to each other is unfortunately true. Paris leaves to be alone and finds himself under a tree, only to notice Juliet there as well. Romeo and Rosaline continue dancing away right in the midst of the crowd. He notices the tremble of her body at his touch and so proceeds to make use of this opportunity to rattle her. Gosh, I hate this guy. At first, he says that she must be afraid, but then he muses that Rosaline must have missed him. But rather to his surprise, Rosaline bites back with insult after insult, saying her body trembles with disgust, and no one could ever miss a deadbeat like him. Ha! Take that, you arrogant jerk! Romeo teasingly mentions how Rosaline seems to have gotten a lot more fierce than before, and after Rosaline leans on the fact that she's been through a lot, Romeo recalls their past. To be precise, the past where Rosaline was a weak and timid girl, where she gets wrapped into every romantic word that comes out of Romeo's mouth. Like a weed's tendrils wrapping around a rose, Romeo pulls Rosaline closer before declaring that once before, she had entirely belonged to him. Rosaline then smacks his hand away, defiantly saying that it's all in the past. What's more, she remarks that she had gotten wise to Romeo's silver tongue, and that she cannot be fooled anymore. When Romeo uses the fact that he essentially replaced her with Juliet, Rosaline also guarantees that her cousin will eventually see through his lies as well, saying that Juliet will not take that long to catch up. However, when the evil man mentions the possibility of him taking Mino away from Rosaline, she doesn't hesitate to give him a huge slap right on the side of his smug face as the entire crowd murmurs in response. Showing how mature and clever she has become, Rosaline then loudly declares she panicked and had slapped a bug on Romeo's face to defuse the crowd, and walks away from him as she leaves one last insult. Hell hath no fury than a woman scorned indeed. The prince then checks up on her, and though she says she's never been better, he had to remind her how to breathe. Meanwhile, the other half of this couple dispute, Paris and Juliet, have a rather uneventful meeting. They both seem mature enough to ask for forgiveness from each other and even admit their own goals amidst their old marriage proposal. Despite that, Paris promises Juliet that whatever scheme she has planned with the church, he'll stop it nonetheless. And Juliet, with the same bright smile she always had, says that they'll see if that's the case. That night, Rosaline can't help but to ponder her life choices. She could have been content with the quiet, but the solemnity of it had gotten all too comfortable for her. Before, all she wanted was to be seen, longing for a change of pace. She wanted to scream at them, loud enough to catch someone's attention that she was there, breathing but aching at the same time. Sure, there was someone who once promised her the world, but in the end, that man only wanted her for what she could offer and didn't really see her value as a woman. That man is now proving how vile he truly is. The snake that hides behind his handsome face. My God, I hate his guts. And now, their eyes pierce at her in a way that would have broken her if she was still the same in her past. But she finally has something precious, someone she can call hers and hers alone to protect. To put it another way, she has a reason to live now. Besides, there's no point in dwelling on the past. She must focus on securing their place within the family and in the nobility. But despite all her efforts so far, she still asks herself, is she really doing enough? Don't doubt yourself, girl, you're doing plenty. Suddenly, her thoughts are interrupted as Mino knocks on the door. When she steps out of the bathroom, a very adorable little human being with a barbaric helmet and a scroll in his hand welcomes her. He is so cute! I can't believe this adorable little creature is even related to that wretched man. He then introduces himself as Mino the storyteller. Rosaline smiles warmly, looking at how adorable her son is. And so he begins his story about a little prince with the queen who fights off the dragon. After years and years of fighting the dragon, the queen runs out of magic. Suddenly, a knight arrives and defeats the dragon. At last, the queen and the little prince will no longer stay in the tower forever, and they lived happily ever after. His mother proudly claps for him, strongly touched by how splendid the story is. And for that, he can have anything he wishes for on his birthday. However, she remembers what Mino asked last year. The little boy wanted a father. Ugh, this is heartbreaking. Poor Mino doesn't deserve this. Fearing that he will say the same thing, she's about to regret it, but then Mino asks for a puppy this year. Rosaline feels relieved knowing that Mino isn't asking for his father this time. Meanwhile, somewhere within the territory lies a group of people who run errands for the friar, including Romeo. Merc complains about how Romeo influences the friar to give them orders. Suddenly, Tybalt speaks up, sitting comfortably on the window. The other man tones them down, recalling that they have to execute the order, and that is to tear down the walls of this city. After a short while, a man knocks on the door where the men are. Given with a chest, the man expresses his gratitude, confidently speaking of how the Montague rats will face its downfall. Clearly, this man is on the Capulet side. Merc reacts to the man's remarks, but his comrade stops him and reminds the man to play the game right. What are they exactly planning? Despite his patience, the man is still getting cocky, asking who the benefactor is so he can thank him instead. Merc's comrade starts to lose his patience to this man. Tybalt realizes that there's no end to these loyalists. Whether for the Montagues or Capulets, for him, they're just spouting nonsense like a pack of snarling wolves, while their leader just stands and watches them with his claws far sharper than knives. After all, trouble always begins with curiosity. Witnessing how Romeo shamelessly pursued Rosaline, Tybalt confronted him one time. Romeo openly admitted that he was having a blast. Tybalt was quite confused if Romeo was just confident or just merely callous for anything but himself. Ugh, he is far more evil and greedy than that. Something that you are now aware of, Tybalt. Indeed, Tybalt has seen him use and twist people's minds, bending their wills however he wanted. He knew that he should have just stopped Romeo right then and there, but anyone would long for excitement amidst the dullness. Tybalt is just an orphan of the Capulets, so he has no direct sympathy for them. At that time, Romeo encouraged him to become a plaything rather than just a spectator of his game, so Tybalt could witness his plans firsthand. Tybalt thought he recognized fear, but only did he truly experience it when he was standing face to face with Romeo Montague. When Tybalt found out about their fake death, the head of House Capulet ordered him not to speak a word about it to anyone else. That time, Tybalt did not only intend to make up for his mistakes, but also to correct them. You better do just that, Tybalt. And by that, he thought of Rosaline, hoping that she could help him. Back in the present, Tybalt pretends to be forgetful. Merc falls into his trap and reveals that they should collect fees for the church's protection of the countryside landlords. Alas, this confirms his initial suspicions and reports it to the head of House Capulet. However, it isn't her call to make a move, nor will it be Tybalt's. It's Rosaline's time to move the piece. On the other side of the kingdom, despite the Montagues and the Capulets' chaos, Paris's butler notices that his master has something shifted within him these days. He's actually working! Who is this man? Due to his previous master's influence, Paris distanced himself from politics. Also, because of the incident with Juliet, it solidified his resolve even further. But for the past few days, Paris has always been working on something to the point that he'd only pause to take a bath or sleep. Turns out Paris is coordinating with the head of public safety, making sure they maximize safeguarding the city with the recent crimes going on. Not only that, he is also writing to the nobles affiliated with the Arts Guild of Verona, asking them to send as much help as they can. The butler is kind of surprised because this kind of bargain comes with big risks and consequences. But Paris already reflected on this a lot. Still, he believes that it is worth risking. Indeed, his late father wouldn't approve of this, but Paris comes to a conclusion that they see life differently. Blushing at that thought, perhaps his father hadn't found someone he'd wanted to fight for, recalling how Rosaline put up a brave face the last time she tried to convince him. Well, I wonder what brought on Paris's recent change, I think someone's feelings are blossoming, am I right? Besides, Prince Aeschylus and Rosaline are working even harder, so the least he can do is to alleviate their burdens. Right there, the butler knows that Rosaline has an effect on him. Later that night, Prince Aeschylus barges into the church, reeking of alcohol and looking for Friar Lawrence. He then commands everyone to bring the friar or else they will suffer his wrath. The other servant of the church tries to calm him down, but Prince Aeschylus is even more aggressive, threatening him that if he doesn't shut his mouth, then he will feed him to his lions. A little intense, my prince. What brought this on? Suddenly, Friar Lawrence arrives at the scene. Prince Aeschylus smirks and confronts him with the reports that the friar is gathering his nobles in secret meetings without letting him know. At this moment, Prince Aeschylus warns him. The church should not betray the crown. From this point, he will not allow the friar to do whatever he pleases anymore. However, Friar Lawrence believes that it's already too late for that. Prince Aeschylus's eyes widened in disbelief. He then grabs the friar's collar, but the latter reminds him not to disrespect God any further and tells him to return to the palace without making a problem out of this. You're the one disrespecting your vows, Sir Priest. After all, you're the one instigating chaos in the city for your own gain. Just then, Prince Aeschylus wonders when did this friar have time to get his hands on elite guards? He just smirks one last time before leaving, telling the friar that this is not over. But the friar still has the guts to reply, saying that it will be over for the prince sooner or later. Shortly after, Prince Aeschylus murmurs to himself. Suddenly, a woman emerges from the bushes, startling the prince. When the woman reveals herself, Prince Aeschylus sighs in relief, also asking her if she managed to do it. Rosaline happily announces that their mission is a success. Everything that happened inside was just an act. How devious! It was all an act? What exactly were these two up to? A few hours ago, Prince Aeschylus and Rosaline had a talk. The prince dismissed her plan about asking for the church's private records. Even with his title, they would still not hand it over. Besides, they must not have even the smallest hint that the crown was catching up to them. Otherwise, they wouldn't have any proof for their assumptions against them. Also, Friar Lawrence was thorough and security was tight too, so they couldn't have someone break in. Rosaline tried to lay out her plans, but the prince cut her off, emphasizing the fact that it was too dangerous. He had gotten a hang of how her mind worked, already guessing where the conversation led to. So, the prince decided to accompany her in retrieving the records. The friar may be parading as God's envoy, but he has the blood of the devil flowing through his veins. Right on! That is one evil little man. If something were to happen to her, even the clutches of death would not be able to put his soul to rest. Looking at how Prince Aeschylus let out words as delicate and pure as honey, laced with fear and worry but uttered like an oath, Rosaline smiled. This was the first time someone cared for her own sake and not their own. Rosaline then beamed with joy as she promised to be careful along the way. The prince realized that no one could stop her from what she was about to do, so he'd just ensure her safety throughout the whole thing. Before Rosaline could enter the church, Prince Aeschylus stopped her and pulled over the veil to properly conceal her face. If not for Paris, I'd definitely go with this man. And so, that plan was being executed. Rosaline managed to trick one of the church's servants. Even praying all day wouldn't be enough to resist one's desire to look at Rosaline's lips and flush about it. Inside, Rosaline got away with the servant and looked for the records. Luckily, she did find what she came for, but when she was about to go, someone pulled her from behind. Romeo found her. Dun dun dun! When asked what kind of mischief she was up to, Rosaline tried to get away from him. Bold of you to assume that she'd actually tell you, Romeo. However, he grabbed her wrist and pinned her on the wall, asking her again the same question. But Rosaline wasn't the same as before, who could just submit to his demands. This time, she ordered him to let go of her and stripped him of his right to call her name. But Romeo was kind of enjoying how she fought back. He then declares that he was left no choice while leaning towards her. "What are you trying to do?" Rosaline gritted her teeth as she clenched her fists. Fortunately, Romeo let go from pinning her on the wall, asking the most obvious question if it ever crossed her mind that he'd really hurt her. "Nah, you've done worse than that. You left her alone while she was pregnant, you good-for-nothing jerk." Rosaline looked straight at him, her eyes screaming of disgust and hate. And yes, she did think that he was capable of hurting her given the deep wounds he left behind. Like a scar that wouldn't go away no matter how much she tried to conceal it. No physical pain could even compare to it. But as shameful as he was, he asked her to just let it go because he had his own reasons. "Where'd you get that overflowing audacity, sir? You surely took your time to get on our nerves." In Rosaline's defense, she had long moved past it. In fact, she wouldn't care even if he choked to death right in front of her. She then pointed a finger at him and poked his chest, telling him not to meddle with her business, or asking her for a dance, and even attempt to walk the same direction as her. She then clearly emphasized that the day he disappeared from her life was the day he vanished for good. Yes! Show that man that he's worthless to you now, Rosie! I really hope karma works its magic soon. But that seemed impossible because they were clearly meant to cross paths again. For the last time, Romeo cornered her with his arms on the wall, warning her not to go any farther than this. Somehow, something was quite off as he firmly advised her not to involve herself in the matters that she wasn't supposed to be in. At this moment, Romeo told her to trust him for her well-being. He is also aware that it was the prince's idea, but Rosaline didn't back down, telling him to just keep his fake concerns to himself. She is bringing the house down with her fiery words. I love how sassy she's become. Little did they know, someone was eavesdropping on the other side of the wall. That night, Prince Aeschylus commended Rosaline for retrieving the records by herself. Now, all they have to do is track the transactions and see where it leads them. Suddenly, Rosaline notices a notable fragrance about Paris. It's sweet and feather-light, like the scent of flowers blown by the gentle breeze. For her, he kind of looks different, or is it because she just appreciates his looks even more this time? Just admit it, Rosaline. You're starting to like him. As she keeps wondering about it, Paris yells at Prince Aeschylus for letting her proceed with a very dangerous task. Ooh, someone is clearly protective. He then asks Rosaline if she's okay or if she's harmed in any way. In her mind, they need not to know about how she encountered Romeo, so she assures them that she's really fine and that there's nothing to worry about. Still, Paris warns her not to make a habit out of it. That reminds her, the head of the Capulet household is inviting Paris for dinner to properly thank him for the help during Prince Aeschylus' competition. Rosaline understands her grandmother's sentiments. After all, it boosted their family's reputation. Paris didn't know that the Capulet matriarch is hospitable, but he agrees to accept the invitation. Prince Aeschylus, on the other hand, is asking if he's invited too. The matriarch made no remarks about this, but Rosaline can make a suggestion to her if he'd like to come. I think he forgot the part that he's a prince, and he can make a presence anytime and anywhere within the borders of the kingdom. Meanwhile, the servant who eavesdropped on Romeo and Rosaline reports this matter to Friar Lawrence. Based on what he heard, those two definitely have a history together. The friar remembers how Romeo sounded overly defensive when he asked about Rosaline last time, and now this information looks certainly enticing to him. And so, he decides to pay Mino a visit. Don't you dare hurt our little Mino! I will personally reach inside this novel and smack you if you so much as touch a hair on his head! Within Rosaline's manor, Mino is playing with his nanny as he waits for his mama to come home. But his nanny informs him that his mother will be coming home late because she will be attending a family dinner at the main residence. And so his nanny suggests that they should head inside because it's scary to stay outside during the night. But little Mino doesn't want to. Just when the other servant calls his nanny to inform her of her duties, Mino goes somewhere else. It's just for a second and now he's gone. No, little man, don't go. She looks for him everywhere within the manor. It happens that Tybalt is walking within the area and coming across a servant who seems to be in a panic, arousing his curiosity. When he finds out that Mino is nowhere to be found, this sends chills down his spine. Aw, he does care for his nephew. Hurry, Tybalt, find him! Meanwhile, Mino steps inside a room where a puppy wags its tail in his presence. It turns out, there's a stray puppy who comes often to that place for shelter. Mino approaches the puppy and pets it. He even brought some biscuits in case the puppy gets hungry. Also, the reason why he waits for his mother is because he wants to keep the puppy. Suddenly, a man appears from behind. The puppy growls, but with just a piercing gaze, it whimpers in an instant. Mino turns his back and faces the man who wears a long robe, asking who he is. Suddenly, Tybalt comes running to where Mino is. He's about to get him when his comrades appear and saves Mino from the unidentified man. One of Tybalt's comrades guides Mino out of the room and hands him over to Tybalt. Tybalt takes the matter from here, but even without a word of thanks, Tybalt's comrade goes ahead. Did the man just find out Tybalt's weakness? I mean, he surely cares for Mino even though he doesn't show it. That night during dinner, Rosaline points at her portrait when she was 6 years old, saying that her grandmother kept it. She looks so adorable, to which Paris agrees. Suddenly, she accidentally steps on her long dress and is about to fall, but luckily, Paris manages to support her. At this moment, she can feel how warm his hands are. But the funny thing is, what is this goosebump feeling creeping over her? She is not normally clumsy, so Paris asks if she's been neglecting her health. Out of embarrassment, she then proceeds to where her grandmother is. Paris didn't even miss a chance to tease her. He's surely enjoying this. Perhaps she should tell her grandmother that he had an upset stomach and went home. Paris laughs at her and finally composes himself as they stand before the door. As soon as they get in, her grandmother welcomes them, but with 2 more people sitting across from each other. Romeo and Juliet was invited over too. It's too late to pretend about having an upset stomach now. Rosaline is forced to put on such a face so as not to disappoint her grandmother even more, but Paris promises to stick by her side throughout the evening. What a way to ruin their appetite. So guys, what do you think of this story so far? Please subscribe and turn on notifications for updates on this and all our other stories, so you can be the first to find out when they're out. Thank you so much for your support. See you in the next one!